I am talking about the quiet, almost imperceptible shift in the dynamic between Valentine Cassadine and Jack Brennan. For a long time, we watched them navigate their complex alliance, but recently, a fracture has appeared, and it is entirely because of Carly Spencer. Valentine has fallen for Carly, and that romance has fundamentally altered his loyalty. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Brennan is no longer a man Valentine can implicitly trust, especially since Carly's influence has driven a wedge between them. Valentine is a master strategist, a man who always has a contingency plan, but right now he is operating in isolation. At first, it didn't seem important. We just assumed Valentine would find another mercenary or WSB contact to do his bidding. But when you are going up against a titan like Sonny Corinthos, you cannot rely on the usual suspects. You need an untainted weapon. You need someone who operates strictly by the book. I keep coming back to Joe Fitzpatrick. If you ask me, Joe is the exact kind of straight-laced, justice-driven police officer that Valentine would seek out in a desperate hour. Valentine knows that he cannot take down Sonny in a traditional mob shootout. Sonny is too well protected, and the collateral damage would alienate Carly forever. Instead, Valentine needs the law. He needs a badge. The more I think about it, the more I realize that Valentine is quietly pivoting away from his old underworld tactics and stepping into the role of an anonymous informant. He is meticulously gathering the ghosts of Sonny's past, preparing to hand them over to a cop who cannot be bought, bribed, or intimidated. We are walking down a dark hallway here, guys, and the pieces are only just starting to illuminate as we move forward. This leads us to the shadow beneath the story. We all know the surface narrative of Sonny fighting for his territory, but there is a much darker history buried not too deep in the archives. I am talking about the shocking murder of FBI agent John Cates back in 2024. We all know Sonny pulled the trigger. We all know the immense, suffocating weight of that crime, a federal offense that would guarantee Sonny spends the rest of his natural life behind bars if the truth ever saw the light of day. A hidden motivation is driving Valentine right now. He isn't just trying to inconvenience Sonny. He wants him permanently removed from the board. Valentine's extensive background with the WSB and his global mercenary connections mean he has access to classified surveillance, encrypted files, and buried evidence that the local Port Charles Police Department could never dream of uncovering. Valentine is slowly, methodically feeding this damning evidence to Joe Fitzpatrick. It doesn't seem accidental that Joe has been receiving delayed information about cold cases lately. Valentine is testing the waters, laying a breadcrumb trail that leads directly to the gun that killed John Cates. But Sonny Corinthos is not a man who sits blindly in the dark. He has Brick. And Brick is an absolute master of digital surveillance, a man who monitors the invisible pulse of Port Charles with terrifying efficiency. It is highly likely that Brick's security algorithms have picked up on the encrypted data transfers or the quiet, off-the-grid meetings between Valentine and Joe. Sonny and Brick are watching, calculating, and realizing that a devastating storm is about to break over their heads. I keep wondering whether this is the exact moment the silent war turns physical. Sonny is a survivor. When backed into a corner with the threat of federal prison hanging over his head, he does not hesitate. Maybe Sonny and Brick decide that they cannot wait for Joe Fitzpatrick to build a solid case. It's possible that they orchestrate a swift, brutal, and entirely secret kidnapping. Imagine Joe, a dedicated officer of the law, simply vanishing into the night before he can file the evidence. This isn't about sending a message. This is about silencing a leak. They snatch Joe, holding him in an undisclosed location, desperately trying to figure out how much he knows and who exactly is pulling his strings. This brings us to a terrifying shift in the narrative. Valentine is a man of immense patience, but when his meticulously crafted plans are disrupted, his cold exterior shatters. If Joe disappears, Valentine will instantly know who is responsible. What if we're missing something about Valentine's capacity for raw, unfiltered rage? he isn't going to play chess anymore. He is going to kick the board over. I can picture Valentine marching directly into Sonny's territory, abandoning all his carefully constructed shadows to confront Sonny and Brick face to face. The tension here isn't just about a mob rivalry. It is about a highly trained lethal operative threatening to tear Sonny's empire apart brick by brick if the innocent cop isn't released immediately. Valentine would use every ounce of leverage, every violent threat in his arsenal, to force Sonny's hand before Joe ends up at the bottom of the harbor. But as the unease deepens, we have to look at the woman standing in the crossfire. Carly Spencer. The growing tension in this story doesn't come from a sudden explosion or a shocking twist. It comes from the quiet, heartbreaking realization dawning on Carly. She has spent months falling in love with Valentine, defending him to her family, and believing that he was a man who had evolved beyond his ruthless past. But if she walks into that room, or if she uncovers the truth about Valentine launching a full-scale, violent war against Sonny and Brick, her entire world will fracture. Carly despises the endless cycle of violence. She left the mob life behind because of the blood it spilled, and now the man she loves is perpetuating that exact same cycle. Carly is going to try to stop him. She will beg Valentine to step back, to find another way, to not let his hatred for Sonny turn him into a monster. But Valentine, driven by his need to save Joe and his absolute obsession with destroying Sonny, might refuse to listen. He is too committed to the path he has chosen. And this is where the emotional undercurrents become almost unbearable. If Valentine refuses to stand down, Carly will realize that she cannot save him. She will have to make the most agonizing decision of her life, severing her romance with Valentine to protect the people she cares about, even if those people include her complicated ex-husband. I can't shake the feeling that this is the moment a forgotten weapon is finally deployed. We have to remember that not too long ago, Brick paid a secret visit to Carly. He handed her a USB drive, a small piece of technology loaded with incredibly damaging, irrefutable evidence against Valentine Cassadine. At the time, Carly chose to protect Valentine. She kept the drive hidden, a secret she buried in the name of love. But now, watching Valentine spiral into a violent vendetta, that USB drive becomes her only way to hit the brakes. Maybe there's another layer here, a tragic irony where Carly has to destroy the man she loves to save, the father of her children, and an innocent police officer. Imagine the heavy, suffocating silence as Carly walks into the Port Charles Police Department. She doesn't make a grand speech. She simply places the USB drive on the desk. The evidence is overwhelming, detailing Valentine's past crimes, his mercenary activities, and his illegal operation. The police have no choice but to act. Valentine is arrested, the cold steel of the handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists, effectively neutralizing his immediate threat to Sonny's organization. It is a devastating betrayal, the absolute end of their romance, driven by Carly's desperate need to stop a war. But as we look at this unfolding tragedy, something feels unfinished. The story doesn't just neatly resolve because Valentine is behind bars. Even in police custody, stripped of his freedom and his resources, Valentine is not a man who goes quietly into the night. Sitting in that interrogation room, facing the destruction of his life and his relationship, Valentine will undoubtedly launch his final counterattack. He will look the detectives dead in the eye and officially accuse Sonny Corinthos and Brick of orchestrating a violent attack and kidnapping Joe Fitzpatrick. He will lay out the entire theory that Sonny took the cop to cover up the 2024 murder of FBI agent John Cates, and that they are silencing an active investigation. Yet, this is where the narrative leaves us standing on the edge of a precipice. Will anyone actually believe him? Valentine is now a formally arrested criminal, a man with a documented history of global deception, terrorism, and manipulation. The police will look at his accusations as the desperate, flailing attempts of a cornered criminal trying to drag his enemies down with him. Without Joe Fitzpatrick there to corroborate the story, Valentine's words might lack the legal weight necessary to secure a warrant against a Teflon Don like Sonny. The more I think about it, the more I realize that Sonny might actually slip through the cracks once again, temporarily evading the massive consequences of his past. But the cost is astronomical. Joe Fitzpatrick is still missing in the wind. a ghost caught in a mobster's web. Valentine is locked away, burning with a vengeance that prison walls cannot contain. And Carly is left standing in the wreckage of her own heart, knowing she pulled the trigger on her own happiness. We are left wandering through the echoes of this battle, knowing full well that a new, incredibly complex legal and emotional war has just begun, and the ultimate truth of what happened to John Cates and Joe Fitzpatrick is still buried in the dark, waiting to tear Port Charles apart all over again.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.